Hey, look at us. We're back to filming in the game room.
Wow.
No more green screen,
For now.
more production, no more gimmicks. This is kicking it old school, but it's morning and somebody's training for Tough Mudder, so there's no beer today. But there is a lot of coffee, and there's something that we were talking about. And it revolves around modern gaming, the current gen or the new gen, next gen, and Generation 6, because I think Gen 6 was the apex of gaming. And there's something that led to us kind of talking about this. There were some memes going around.
So we saw a meme a while back that PS5 is now officially older than the Sega Dreamcast. And I was like, what? That like blows my mind. I know the Sega Dreamcast was only in production for a year and a half, 2 years, and it was short-lived. But I was like, man, the PS5's been out that long, and I still don't want one?
Yeah.
Like, so the wheels started turning, and it was like, what has the PS5 done in the amount of time that the Dreamcast was alive? And like, well, there's so many things to talk about. Like, it's just crazy to compare them.
Yeah, and I think in this specific example, I've always, when I will talk to people and they'll use how many album sales an album has or how many box office dollars a movie did. I'm like,
sales don't mean shit.
That's not a measure of quality. And I love looking at these two things juxtaposed to each other because the Dreamcast sold like 9 million units, 9.13 million units in a year and a half, and then it was gone. Just boom, like that. And it seems, you know, when you're younger, everything seems like a longer window of time. As you get older, everything goes faster. The PlayStation 5, you can still barely get your hands on one, but it sold like 20 million units. Yeah. It's not even that far behind the PS4's trajectory.
Which is insane. It sold double than what the Dreamcast did in its lifespan, which is absolutely insane. And it's still growing, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, it's still going to sell a lot more.
And I look at like the games. To me, I mean, consoles, I think we've became very hardware conscious as opposed to software conscious in gaming. You know, the Dreamcast, if you go all in, like North American, PAL, all regions, it had like 600 games in a year and a half. And you look at like games that really moved the needle, like all-time classics. And this might rub some people the wrong way, but where are the games on the PS5? The exclusive games. And
exclusive is the word because there's so many games that are available on PS4 as well. You know?
Yeah. And, you know, I get it. The Dreamcast, you're like, well, some of those maybe weren't exclusive. They were arcades or they were multi-platform games. And I understand that. But I feel like the Dreamcast did so much more for gamers in its year and a half than the PS5 has done. There's still nothing out other than maybe Returnal that makes me want to grab a PlayStation 5.
It's crazy to think about, like, the launch. Because we did a video when this new generation launched and we were like, what's the hype? Think about the launch of the Dreamcast. It launched $99.99, great freaking marketing, and then it launched with 19 games. That's awesome. The PS5 launched with Astro's Playroom and Fortnite, and maybe other games that were also available on your PS4, so you don't really, there's no real reason to get one. What? It's just weird, dude. I know it's a different generation, and maybe we're like getting old and being like, get off my lawn, but like, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, I don't either, but I think, you know, and that's what got us in this conversation was all those talking points. But that's really not what this episode's about. It's not a PS5 versus Dreamcast per se. Have we entered this era of formulaic gaming? And was Gen 6 the peak of the mountain?
Yeah.
Was it the apex that gamers maybe did or didn't realize at the time that this is it? And from here, we're going to have diminishing returns and graphical leaps. And the stage is set for what we're going to have forever. It's going to be Call of Duties. It's going to be Halos.
Assassin's Creeds.
Yep. Grand Theft Autos.
Gears of War. I mean, nothing against those games. Like, I love Grand Theft Auto 5. And, like, you know...
Yeah, some of those games came, you know, in Gen 7.
Yeah.
But Gen 6 felt so innovative. And it felt like people were willing to make weird games like iNinja. And even the survival horror genre. There were so many different styles of games within that genre, and now everybody's kind of running the same track when it's a survival horror game.
It's cookie cutter because they know what sells, and obviously in the new generation, there are a ton of indie games that are like doing really cool things, but I feel like a lot of people don't know about those, like especially the casual gamers. They just know like, oh, the AAA titles, same shit.
Yeah, and I think that you know, being how formulaic it's gotten, you kind of know your fistful of franchises that you follow, and I'm a Call of Duty person, and every time one comes out, I'm going to get it. But back in Gen 6, this is where I think things were the best, is I had friends that were casual gamers, I had friends that were hardcore gamers, I had friends that only, you know, or didn't only, that would be counterintuitive to the point I'm trying to make, but they were more RPG fans, or whatever it was. but everybody seemed to like playing Burnout.
Yeah.
And NBA Street 2. And when Grand Theft Auto came out, everybody was playing that type of game because the games were innovative and they were fun. And I think gamers had so much, the playground was just so robust, dude, of what you could play.
So insane, Generation 6. Like, if you're a fan of this, so many games. If you're a fan of this, so many games. But then also you're like, well, that looks freaking cool. Let me go over there. Like, there's all these freaking options for games. And it's just insane because I don't feel like there's that many options for genres of games nowadays. It's just like your cookie cutter games. Like, where's all the arcade sports games? I know we've talked about that a lot, but they quit doing that because, I don't know, it's PC culture and you're not allowed to jump on people anymore. Or I don't know.
I mean, I think the counterpoint to that is games now are so much more robust. I think the dev cycles on the games take so much longer. There's so much more that goes into making a game, and a lot of games have gravitated towards this 150 hours or more open world, where they aren't slapping games out as much that you can beat in 8 to 10 hours. There are some, of course, but I think it makes development teams and companies at large less likely to roll the dice because they have so much skin in the game from a dollar standpoint.
Because they've worked on it for so long, and they've spent so much money that they have to get their money back and make a profit. Yeah. So that does make sense. Yeah. And like back in the day, they were just trying so many things and just seeing what stuck. And
yeah, it was just fun. And I don't know. You got to go back to that time. There were 4 consoles on the scene.
Yeah.
We have 3 now. And where do you put Nintendo Switch? I think it's got a foot in both generations. But even Nintendo, the king of innovation, and I love the Nintendo Switch, don't get me wrong, but even some of Nintendo's homegrown titles are falling kind of on deaf ears with people. You don't have to look too far to find somebody that says the new Mario Tennis, it's not as good as it was back on the GameCube.
Or Striker.
Yes.
So maybe Nintendo's going on that same rabbit hole where they're like, let's just kind of do a cash grab.
Yeah.
And we love the new Strikers. The new Strikers is awesome, but so many people hated it.
Yep.
So many people said, oh, this doesn't have enough depth, doesn't have enough, because we're kind of spoiled with all this freaking crazy games that you forget, like, oh, Strikers doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It's just awesome, kick-ass fun.
Mm-hmm. I think as a whole, we were spoiled in Gen 6, and we didn't even maybe realize it when there were 4 consoles on the scene. Xbox was new, so that was refreshing.
Rock, that is impressive.
PlayStation 2 changed the game.
Revolutionary.
It was, seriously, at the time, everybody wanted a PS2. Then you got the GameCube and Dreamcast falling behind. I mean, think about this. The PS5 in a year and a half, which has been very hard to get your hands on, has outsold those consoles. I mean, it's really close on the GameCube.
It's really close to the GameCube, but still.
Yeah.
That's insane, and doubled what the Dreamcast did. I really don't get it because I don't have an itch, or I don't want the new consoles, like, at all.
Yeah.
And they've been out for 2 years now, and I still don't. I'm still playing my PS4, and I just got an Xbox One, and like, there's no reason for me to get one, and I don't get, what am I missing?
Well, I think a lot of people are getting it for the FOMO and to have the latest and greatest shiny thing, like the new iPhone.
But 20 million units sales just for FOMO?
Yeah, I guess, but what are they missing out on? I don't know.
Yeah.
You're probably playing PS4 games on your PS5.
Here's what they're missing out on. Last of Us remastered for the PS5.
Yeah.
So, when that got announced, I was like, are you kidding me?
The game plays perfect on the PS3.
And then it's remastered for the PS4.
Yeah.
What do you want to see his nose hairs? Is that why you want to get on the PS5?
Yeah, it was a time that I think we didn't maybe realize. I think everybody knew it was badass. But, it's kind of like maybe if you grew up, on the West Coast during the 90s, you maybe didn't realize that you were at the summit, and it was never going to be better than that. I mean, I think back to 90s wrestling and early aughts. I didn't know. You're just in the moment, and it's great, but you don't realize that this is a pocket in time that will never be replicated, ever. And I'm wondering if that is what Gen 6 is. Is that the last great over the top? I loved Gen 7. I loved Gen 8.
Yeah.
I still love gaming, and there's still great stuff coming out. But there were 4 consoles: PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Dreamcast, that were all kick-ass, and friends had different ones.
And you were just playing it, and it didn't matter if you were Team Microsoft, Team PlayStation, because you were like, oh, you have a Dreamcast?
Yeah. And
let's freaking play some JKR Radio.
It was so fun, the diversity of what people were playing. I remember, having friends at, like, Final Fantasy, NFL Street, Madden, Metal Gear, Grand Theft, like we were playing everything back then.
Dude, I remember like I had a PS2 and I was playing like the Bond games and like MVP Baseball 05. But then
Tony Hawk.
Yeah, Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
And then I would go over to my friend's house and they had a GameCube and we would play four-person strikers, and that was so much fun. And then like my buddy had an Xbox and he introduced me to Halo, and it was just like, this is so cool. Just go to people's different houses and experience these different things, and it was a blast.
I just think it was a moment in time that we got to experience, and it was amazing. And it's taken kind of, you know, some years to go by to look back at it and be like, man, like if you started around the NES era, everything made a logical progression up to Gen 6.
Yeah.
Every generation felt like, holy shit. And then I remember the first time seeing a PS2 and just my mind being blown, and I had to freaking have one.
Well, yeah, there was a purpose to get one. So say like you had an N64 and you were a fan of Super Mario 64. I don't know why you would be, but back in the day you probably were. And then they released the GameCube, and they released this weird game called Luigi's Mansion. How else are you going to play that? You got to get a GameCube. There was reason to get these new consoles. What's the reason to get a PS5?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get it. Man, Gen 6 is so incredible, but it also, like, counterpoint, is it nostalgia? Is nostalgia part of the reason we keep going back to Gen 6? Or, like, you know, is that part of it?
I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but the thing is when you go back to things, they do have to deliver. So
yeah, that's true.
You know, I just look at all things that could be brought into this equation. Is, you know, when I go back to the NES, it's what I remember, and it delivers on what I play.
Perfect.
I love the PS1 and the N64 in the moment. When I go back to them, it's kind of like,
yeah.
It doesn't quite deliver. I loved music in the 90s, still love music in the 90s. I loved the Power Rangers in the 90s, and now when I go back to it, I'm like, how did I watch that shit? Quality, I think, sustains over time. Now, you may force yourself through some dog shit, like, oh, I love the Power Rangers, I loved Saved by the Bell. I'm going to force myself to watch these and pretend I like them. You know they're not as good as you remember them being. But there are certain things that were great and that were timeless. And I do feel like a lot of the stuff from that era is very timeless.
I think Gen 6 holds up so well because graphics were at a point where they had figured it out, and they were still doing some basic, you know, 2D, and then there was 3D, and they were doing all these fun things that still hold up. And I know people don't like that, but they aged really well. And
it was kind of the,
it's like cream of the crop.
The groundwork was set for so many things. I mean, open world games were defined in that era, and that's what they would build off of forever. They finally figured out, for the most part, first person shooters in that era when Halo came onto the scene, and it just changed everything. They followed that. Then you look at things that were as good as they ever were and never reached that level again. Arcade sports, wrestling games. That was the peak. That was the peak. Not saying that SmackDown games are better than like No Mercy, but they were still really, really good.
Yeah.
And it's never recovered. We're still getting games that are just mediocre at best. And I don't think it's ever going to be as on fire as it was. And I think competition drove it, because
there isn't competition anymore.
It's defined. The players are there. The AAA developers are there. You know,
and you're either Team Xbox, Team PlayStation, and then you're hardcore in those, and then the casual gamers have a Switch, and even hardcore gamers also have a Switch. You know what I mean? Like, there are some people that have a PS5 and the new Xbox, and it's like,
I just think there's a lot of a lot of things trying to break on the scene. You still had your Konamis and Capcoms, your old dogs in the yard, but then you get these new companies, your rock stars that are like, hey, Capcom, check this shit out. Grand Theft Auto 3, how you doing? Max Payne, how about that?
But then they're releasing like Neo Contra and Shattered Shoals. You know what I mean? Like all these like, okay, Contra's still alive in Gen 6, dude.
Wow. That's another good point. That was Contra's last real push.
I know.
Gen 6. After that, it's...
Well, you know, some things kind of trickle into Gen 7, like arcade sports, like NBA Jam on the PS3 is one of the best NBA Jam games, but that was the last NBA Jam game, you know? I don't know. It could be because, you know, Gen 6 also is when online gaming started, and then Gen 7 is when it really took over. So gaming kind of shifted then. It's a weird thing, and I know it's kind of just discussion based, and there's no real way we're going. It's just, I just don't get it. What am I missing, guys? Like, what am I missing about the new generation? Why do I need a PS5? Why do I need a new Xbox? Maybe Xbox because Game Pass and backwards compatibility, but my Xbox One offers that. You know, so...
I think it's more of a, 4K, bro.
I don't have a 4K TV.
Yeah, I think so many people are caught up in the hardware. We've kind of got to where it's almost like PC fans, where they've always got to have the latest and greatest, which I nothing against PC gamers, but I remember all my friends growing up that were it was like every 2 weeks. Oh, there's a new graphics card.
chip.
I gotta put in I got some more RAM this week. I'm just playing games, dude. I don't really give a fuck.
I don't care, dude. Last of Us plays great on the PS3. I don't care that it looks slightly better on the PS5.
Yeah.
It's still gonna be the exact same game. It's not like they probably added DLC and freaking all this other crap. But still, it's like I don't get it. Why haven't they released like the epic like, oh, you need to play this. You need to play this. The only game I can think of is Returnal. And that game is badass on the PS5.
Yeah,
but I'm not gonna justify spending however much it is just for that one game. Well, the new Ratchet & Clank, I played it, badass. But the Ratchet & Clank games on the PS2 are also badass.
Yeah, and I've always looked at games like Ratchet & Clank. I love them. But I could play it tomorrow or 15 years from now. Like, I'm in no...
Yeah, I'm in no hurry to play it, you know?
It wasn't like, when Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey came out, that was like, dude, I gotta play this game. Like, now. Dude. I don't get that way with Ratchet & Clank. Love the franchise. But in the comment section below, was, in your opinion, because our opinion is that the apex, the top of the mountain,
the apex of the vortex,
was Generation 6. And I'm not saying the other generations that have followed are bad per se, but I don't think they've reached that level. I don't think we ever will again, not to be doom and gloom, not to be get off my lawn guy. But I think we all knew it was badass at the time.
Yeah.
But as we look back at it now, it's like, it not only was badass, but it was probably the best it's ever going to be.
What's crazy too, Gen 6, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane. And what's crazy, just to like real quick, is we're still like, because Gen 6, there's so many freaking games.
Yeah.
We're still finding and playing games on Gen 6 that are epic, and a lot of them are super cheap.
Yeah.
You can get 4 or 5 Gen 6 games for the price of getting one new PS5 game that's available on the PS4 that's, oh, the new Assassin's Creed. All right, well, let me pick up NFL Blitz, Tony Hawk 3,
in 6 months, you'll find that Assassin's Creed DeGrazio for $5.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Gen 6, man, I think it was the peak of my gaming growing up, and I still play all the time. It's just every console. I love the PS2, but then when I'm like, oh, Xbox, GameCube, Dreamcast, like, it's just like so freaking, such an awesome generation of games.
We were just on an awesome playground.
I think we got spoiled, I think, in Gen 6.
We just had so much goodness coming in. Let us know in the comments. Is Gen 6, in your opinion, the peak? Will it ever be that good again? As physical media is going away. Games require downloads, updates, patches.
Day one updates. You can't even play it when you put it in. We could go down to so many rabbit holes. We have.
But as we close, wrap your mind around the fact that the PlayStation 5 is now older than the Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah, that's what really got us spinning.
It's insane. We appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next time for another fun talk right here on Gaming Off the Grid.
Check, 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 check.
Blinded. I gotta shake that fucking shit.
It's because it fucking digs into your retinas.
My retini.
Yeah, that's plural.
Dude, spots, dude. C-spot run. Yes, I do.